after it's all said and done, what kind of legacy do I want to leave behind?
Welcome back to you all. Welcome back to you all. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are and whoever you are. I'm Oliver Perry, back on the Oliver Perry Show, and today I have a guest, and I'm going to say her first name, and I'm going to let her say her own last name because I don't want her to beat me up. First name is Yinka. Yinka is an author. She is a mother. She is a coach. She is a strategist. She is all of the above, a queen as she carries herself across this wonderful world. So, Adegbenle, if you could please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you are or who you are.
Wonderful. Hi, Oliver. It's great to be here. So my name is Adeyinka. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Adeyinka Adegbenle. I'm a wife. I'm a mom to three lovely children. I live on Long Island, New York. I'm an entrepreneur, a coach, a strategist, a coach, and now an author.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. All right, Adeyinka. So let's talk, and I'm just gonna say you'll hear me call her Yinka because that's what we call her. So, so Yinka, let's talk a little bit about the book. So the book is centered around Joab, who is a general in King David's army, and it kind of talks about just the characteristics you can kind of learn from him and his experience. And it's interesting because Joab isn't exactly a widely covered character, if you will, in the Bible. Why did you pick? What made you choose Joab for your first? Like, this is your first book, so what did what made you pick him for your first book?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So Job is a character that I've been fascinated with, just his
Mm-hmm.
story for a very, very long time. And, anytime I read his story, it's his feats, So
Mm-hmm.
I'm an excellent strategist, and he was very, very good at what he did. He was the top general of this huge army, and he excelled in that role. But every single time I dug deeper into the story, then you see how you see this very prominent figure
Mm-hmm.
who was a public success. But then as you look deeper, you see all of the cracks in the foundation of his character. You
Right.
see how, in his private life, he wasn't so much of a success. So that was it. It was just, that was it. That was what drew me to Joab, because it's just his story, and he's a character that a lot of us can relate to. We're not perfect. We're all fallible human beings. But then, even with all of his flaws, he still went on to do many great things.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, how did you? How does this apply? How did this book kind of change you and evolve you as an author? Because well, not just an author, but as a person. Because you studying a character is one thing, putting the character into physical black and white form and centering your thoughts around this character and the thought process of the like you said, the characteristics of his character, if you will. How did that change you and develop you as a person as you wrote the book?
Oh gosh. You know, my intention initially when I
Mm-hmm.
started with this book was just really to just write about Joab. Like you said, he's not a well-known figure,
Right.
but then he played such a huge part in the story and the story of the Israelites, and even
Mm-hmm.
his more famous boss, King David. So my original intention was just to, just write a story, show the many great things he did, and
Mm-hmm.
talk about the not so great things that he did. But then, as I did the research, I just started to see all these lessons. I mean, all these lessons that focused a lot on character development.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you this. So I had to. It's so funny because so I was done with the book, and then I had to go back, and my editor actually suggested, like let's hone in on the lessons, because they are very important.
Right.
When I was done writing this book, um, I felt as though I had gone through a mastermind on character development,
Mm.
because we see over and over again how this was someone that was he was very ambitious, like a lot of us, very
Yes, he
driven.
was.
And this he was just so good at what he did. In his 40-year plus tenure as top general, army general of the army, he remained undefeated. He never lost a battle. That was how good he was. He didn't lose one battle.
Right.
But then you see cracks in the character. So he was so focused on, I guess, all of the accomplishments. But then, as once he got to the pinnacle of success, you see how, because he lacked good character values, and because he didn't spend the time to develop those character values, and you see how that plays out towards the end of his life. You see how that defines his legacy.
Mm-hmm.
So what he did for me really was just, like I said, it was like going through a year-long mastermind on character development,
Right.
and it just made me see that yes, it's good to be ambitious, it's good to be a goal-getter, but however, we need to also spend the time to develop our character as well, character
Mm-hmm.
values.
Yeah, that's the truth. It's interesting because in the book, early on in the book, and spoiler alert for those of you going to purchase the book, I'm just telling you now this is going to happen. I'm gonna spoil it very like the very very beginning. One of the things that I kept going back to, and I'll get into why I enjoyed this part of it so much, is the story about Abner and how Abner had the issue with Joab and his brothers. And in that story, Abner kills Joab's, I think it's his
His
youngest brother.
younger brother,
His younger
his
brother, that's right.
youngest
He
brother,
killed his youngest
Asahel.
brother. Right. Now, how he killed him was, there was a couple things that really stood out to me in the story is how he killed him, number one. Number two, the actions before and thereafter he killed him. So, first of all, during the battle, I don't know, things kind of got haywire. It's hard for what's interesting about another part that's interesting about the Bible is that it constantly has these slight holes in it, right? There's always some things you have to kind of pull from the Bible, and the Bible's not going to give you everything up front. So you talk about the battle, and the battle somehow the youngest brother ends up chasing Abner through this battle, and Abner turns to him and says, "Hey, don't stop chasing me, stop chasing me, chase somebody, fight somebody in your left or right, right?" I did a lot of reading on this particular part. I love this part of it. So Abner ends up killing him with the blunt end of his spear. Why do you think the blunt end of the spear? Because in the text it actually says the blunt end of the butt end of the spear. But I could not figure out for my life why that part might have, because everything in the Bible I feel like has some level of importance. And that particular part stood out to me because why would you tell me that he killed him with the blunt end of the spear as opposed to just killed him with the spear? It literally says he pretty much ran him through from the blunt end, from one end, the front of his body to the back of his body. With the regular spear, that's easy, or on the front side of the spear, but the back side, that seems a little bit more difficult.
Right.
What in that part of the book, and I know it's just a really specific part, but it was bugging me. I wanted to hear your thoughts on that particular part and why that might be super important in the Bible.
Right, and that's a great question. That's a great question. And before I answer that question, I'll tell you this. So the story of Joab, it's not written in any chronological order in the Bible. So what I had
Oh,
to do was literally just pull out the different pieces from the
right,
different parts of the Bible,
right.
and then we put everything together as you would do for a puzzle in that chronological order to
Oh, okay.
present his life
That
story.
explains stuff because I was reading. I'm like, I wonder why Yinka went from this to this and then came back to this. And I understood the thought process behind it, but I didn't understand why you did it in the book. Now that makes sense. That's okay.
Yeah,
That
it's
clears a lot
not
of stuff
it's
up.
not in any chronological order in the Bible, and I had to, of course, get all of that information from different books of the Bible as well.
Right.
All right, so back to Asahel, Joab's brother, and Abner. Abner was a very experienced, battle-hardened general, more
Mm-hmm.
experienced than Joab. Abner could have, and Asahel was gifted. All of Joab and his brothers they were gifted, and all of them were senior officials in David's army.
Mm-hmm.
Abner could have easily taken out Asahel, but Abner knew who Asahel was. Asahel was Joab's brother. And you see repeatedly, Abner said to Asahel, "Stop chasing me. Go chase one of the other soldiers. Stop chasing me."
Yep.
But Asahel was so, I would say, foolish, really, because in the story, he's compared to being as fast as a gazelle. Gazelles are the second fastest animals on the planet. So he was
I,
fast.
I didn't know they was the second fastest. Okay, that's
Yeah,
I just learned
yeah,
something new. All
yeah,
right.
yeah. I found out that during the course of the research. So he was so Asahel was
Mm-hmm.
fast, and that was great in ancient times because there were no cars. So if you're fast, you get things done. Personally, I don't think it was Abner's intention to kill him. Otherwise, he
Interesting.
would have killed him outrightly. Abner was
Right.
a very, very experienced, battle-hardened general. He used the blunt end of the spear. He used it, I believe, and from my research and everything, I guess to sort of push him to the side to
Mm-hmm.
deter him.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, because Abner was on a carriage, like on a battle carriage of sorts. He was, but because again, Asahel was as fast, he ran as fast as the gazelle, so he was able to catch up with him. So he used the blunt hand, just to distract him, to push him to the side. It wasn't his
Right.
intention. However, because Asahel was so fast, because he had again the strength of speed.
Right.
So when Abner, pushed the back of the spear towards him, he was coming with such speed that he just ran right into it.
That's that's fast. First of all, that's you got to be really fast to kill yourself on the blunt end of a spear. That's
He
nuts.
was, keep in mind, he was as fast. He ran
Right.
as the Bible clearly describes him as being as fast as a gazelle. Gazelles are the second fastest animals.
Right.
I
Like you
think they
said.
run, something up to like 65 miles per hour. So
Right.
these are fast animals.
So what's
So he was
interesting?
a fast guy.
Yeah. What's really interesting, and I'm adjusting myself because I'm getting into this. I really like this. I really like this kind of conversation. So what's interesting is that it's the same. Everything in your book, people can apply to regular business, to entrepreneurship, to their lives because it's all character based. And in this fact that he was one of those people who was so fast, he was gifted in a way, and unfortunately, his gift got the advantage of him in the sense that he had the blinders on and wasn't really seeing clearly and wasn't paying attention to people around him and telling him, hey, you go somewhere else, man. Go somewhere else, right? And all he had to do was, if he had stopped for a second, it was the middle of a fight. So I imagine there's like 16, 17 people around him fighting it out. He could have either saved somebody else, as far as somebody else's life, or just fought somebody else altogether, as opposed to chasing somebody down who's on, a battle chariot and who's a hardened general. Because there's no way that he didn't know Abner was a tough guy, if you will.
Right.
So
Right.
that's holy cow. All right, so that
And,
that messes me
and
up.
I'm just going to add to that. I'm just going to add to that. And then
Please.
again, you see, it was so funny because I kept, it took me a while to actually pull the lesson, to call the lesson from that
Mm-hmm.
entire incident. And it boils down to this. At that point, Asahel, Joab's brother, exercised poor judgment. Yes, he was gifted. It was, he had the gift of speed, but then the failure on his part to exercise good judgment
Mm-hmm.
cost him his life. He died
Wow.
prematurely.
Yes, it did.
So it's great to to be talented. We're all gifted in one way or the other, but
Mm-hmm.
then we have to combine that with other things as well, the necessary values, good judgment. Literally, poor judgment on the part of Asahel cost him his life.
Right. That's a fact. That's an absolute fact. So I'm gonna stop being greedy. I'm gonna be how about now? That better?
Okay, you're back on it now. I couldn't hear
All
you.
right. Well, let me mark that. I don't know what just happened. Let's see. 14 minutes 36 seconds. 14:36 cut out. Okay. So back to the story. So with your book, a lot of the stuff can be put into just business and entrepreneurship principles. And there's like 100, I think it's 107 pages if we include the prefix and the ending, your page on your with your background on it.
Right.
What would you say is the top three characteristics you think that people should read when they read your book? If they only had three characteristics they could read, what are the three that you would recommend to those who are entrepreneurs, business owners, or even those who are looking to write their own book?
Wonderful. Great. That's a great question. I would say I'll start from, well, this is in no particular order,
Okay.
but firstly,
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned previously that, in a quest to become successful in whatever our field is, as we hone in on, our skill set, we shouldn't forget that our character values is what defines us.
Mm-hmm.
Because after it's all said and done, no one is going to remember you for how much money you made, the kind of results you got. You'll be remembered for the kind of in person that you are, and that is that is defined by a person's character. A person's character, in turn, defines the person's legacy after the person is long gone. So, in our pursuit of success and everything else, we need to pay close attention to developing the right character traits because that's what defines us.
Okay.
So that's number one. Number two, ambition. Um, Ambition is it's great. Ambition is just it's fantastic. Personally, I don't think a lot of things will get done without ambition. However, there needs to be some kind of balance because unchecked ambition can become a destructive force. Can become a destructive force that causes us to, to do things out of character, things that we never imagined we would ever do, as we see in the story of Joab, because of having too much ambition. There is such a thing as having too much ambition. It's unchecked ambition that's out of balance. So we should always check the motive behind our ambition. Why am I pushing? Why am I driving so hard? And we should always evaluate that. We should always evaluate that to ensure that there is some kind of balance so it doesn't become a destructive force. And then last but not the least, there is boundaries are very important. Boundaries are very, very important because I believe in every single person's life, we'll get to that junction where we'll be asked or find ourselves in a situation where we're asked to do something that we probably might not want to do. If we don't very early on set our values, because our values, again, is what defines us. If we don't set our values, we will end up making choices that that are just detrimental that will be detrimental to us in the long term. And just very quickly, so you see in the story of Joab, you see where his boss, King David, asked him to be an accomplice to murder. And you see this, overly ambitious Joab very willingly said, "Oh, okay," with no question asked. Right. Joab was powerful enough, even if the king had lost his mind. Joab was the king's right-hand man. Right. Joab had the ear of the king. He was powerful enough to put brakes onto that madness. But because he was so concerned with his title, with the role, with the position, as being second in command to probably the most popular king at the time, he just willingly went along with the plot to murder an innocent person. And we might think, oh, that could never happen to me. But then, I believe in our journey in life, if we don't set those values and if we don't ensure that those values are loud enough, that even if they should be loud enough that if anyone even thought, if the thought even crossed their mind to come ask us to do something contrary to our values, right away, it will be a no, because our values we've had that conversation with ourselves,
Right.
and we carry ourselves that way. Our values are loud enough that no one would come ask us to do anything contrary to our values.
Hmm. That's deep. I'm gonna have to think about that one for a little bit. That's deep. So yeah, while I think about that one, here's my next question for you. Now you mentioned character. The characters is really the foundation of you as a person and your legacy. So my question to you is, how does one develop and improve on their own character?
Right. Again, that goes back to really, having conversations with oneself, basically. Just asking questions like, what kind of person am I? What do I want to be remembered for?
Mm-hmm.
After it's all said and done, what kind of legacy do I want to leave behind? And and once we start to have this kind of conversation and asking ourselves this kind of questions, the answers will come up. Okay. And then it would help to shape the decisions that we make in life as well. So it wouldn't be a thing of, anything goes. Like, okay, why am I even doing what I'm doing?
Right.
Okay. And what are the things that I would never do? Like, what are things, in my line of work, in my business, what are the no-nos? Okay. If I was asked to, like, it's, if, am I, for example, integrity. Okay. So if, if you decide that, okay, I want to be known for integrity. So basically, what that's saying is, you're not who you present yourself to be in the public should be the same as who you are in your private life when no one is looking, when the spotlights are on you. There should be no dichotomy. You shouldn't
Right.
be a public success and then a private failure. We shouldn't, open the newspapers one day and then, read this about you. So having those conversations with oneself regularly. Say, I'll give you a good example. This weekend I'm going on a retreat, just a private, just myself, just to spend time with myself to, because and it's on this kind of retreat that's where I ask myself this kind of questions. What kind of person um do I want to be?
Mm.
Because Joab, even though he was super successful. I have to. So even though, yeah, there were bad things about him, but then, it's I can't ignore who he was on the public front. This guy excelled at his job. He excelled. He was so good at his job that there were wars, there were battles that his boss should have led. He was so good, and his boss knew that he would always deliver, that his boss oftentimes just sent him to go lead those battles. That was how good he was at what he did. But then you saw, and then you just saw that he never just took that time to develop his character.
Right.
So just having those kind of conversations with oneself regularly would help to shape the kind of person that we're becoming day by day.
Absolutely. This you mentioned something that made me want to go back and turn the pages. You mentioned that how good at his job he was, and one thing that really stuck out to me, and it's early on in the book. Again, a lot of this stuff was really early for me in the book. I got stuck at the very beginning because I kept going back. I was like, oh, kind of piecing things together. So as what's really good about I think about the book is that it forces you to pick up the text because we forget sometimes how much the text speaks to every facet of life, and it can speak to anybody who whatever they're doing. In this particular case, it talked about how King David, I think, was even one of the ones that said, those three sons, and I can't remember their father's name, but those three sons are
Mother,
was it
zero,
mother?
zero.
Oh man, so
It
I'm
was the
all off.
mother.
So the
Their mom,
mother, so I
their
thought that was
father
the
died
father.
very early on.
Okay, so it said, the sons, the three sons, they're too powerful. For somebody to say that at the level that he was at means a lot. Because it means not just that Joab was really strong, that his two brothers were extremely powerful or talented in some form or fashion as well. Clearly, one was as fast as a gazelle, so he's got some gift going. It's I just enjoyed that part of the book that I had to really literally pick up the text and say, okay, wait, what? I didn't know this part was in there. Like, I didn't know that, I didn't remember that Saul decided to fall on his own sword, or that Saul's people were so tight around him that they refused to do it, or his guy he wanted him to do it refused to do it, and then killed himself afterwards. That was that was nuts. Like, I was like, wait, what just happened? The guy says to Saul, "I can't do it." Saul basically says fine, and then grabs a sword and runs himself through. The guy looks and sees Saul fall on his own sword and says to himself, I'm giving context here. Clearly in his mind says, I, I can't live without this guy as my leader. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And he kills himself. What? 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 How many people have, and this is again me getting into this particular instance of the book, but how many people have people in their business that would literally do anything for them, and they're not appreciating that person, or they're not truly taking care of that person? There's a perfect example that was brought up one time, in I think it's 50 Cent's book. He had a particular character who was in the book that walked around with Floyd Mayweather, and Floyd Mayweather abused the guy, whatever the guy's name is. But it made me think of that instance. This same instance made me compare the two, because this is a guy, Saul, who says to his guy, "Kill me," and he's doing it to sacrifice himself for his people. And the guy says, "I can't do it." So Saul does it. Then the guy kills himself. What? I keep saying it because it's still blowing my mind. It's still nuts. But I wanted to, if you could, I'm gonna stop running my mouth because I don't want to take up all the time. I really enjoyed the book. So, um, what parts of who Joab was, uh, can someone who's looking to write their own book take from your book and apply into their own lives? Because you mentioned the characteristics. I'm sorry, the characteristics that you thought were most important. But I know that's got to be different. The overall characteristics versus the characteristic of an entrepreneur or a writer are going to be different. What are those characteristics that you think are super important for entrepreneurs and business people to be into with?
Gosh, I remember I mentioned the three, but the
Mm-hmm.
one as you were talking, the one that actually came to mind as well is accountability.
Mm. Mm.
Accountability, and I'll break that down. Joab, he was a nobody that became this very prominent figure, and he became so powerful that even his own boss was scared of him.
Yeah,
And
he
Joab knew
was.
that.
Yeah, he was.
Joab knew that. Like he knew that, something. No, I'm like, I know I'm good at what I do. I am very gifted,
Right.
and no one can mess with me, including the king.
Mm.
You know. And then he had the support of his brothers. And that was, it was that entire mindset that
Mm.
was literally out to led to his downfall. Because if we ever get to that place, that pinnacle of success, whatever it is whatever it is for you or for me,
Mm.
and we find ourselves in positions of where there's no accountability. We feel we can do whatever because, we're the big done, we've arrived, and, there's no one that can tell us anything. I think that's literally just the beginning of the end because we will literally start making decisions like crazy people
Right.
because because where's the accountability? If those around us are so scared to come tell us that, okay, you know what, I think you're on a runaway train that's about to crash. If he had people in his life, even his brothers, it was just, even Asahel died very early on.
Yep.
But his other brother, there was no mention of his other brother having that kind of conversation with him because again, it was so powerful. He was so powerful. Or I think it said about 4 or 5 times. David, his boss, the king himself, you hear him saying, "Oh my goodness, these songs of Zeruiah are too powerful for me,"
Right.
because the king himself was scared of the man. So, as a business person, an entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to ever you should be accountable to someone. Be it, there should be someone, be it your wife, be it a good friend, there should be someone that should be able to come tell us to our face
Mm.
that, okay, you know what, you missed it, you blew it, or hey, let's let's slow things down a bit because if you continue on this track, on this path,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to lead to destruction.
Preach that word, Yinka. Preach that word, Yinka. Preach that word. That
So,
was good.
but sadly, Joab he had no one like that. There was,
Right.
and not that he didn't have people like that, but he positioned himself to be someone who was unapproachable. You see, when after he committed murder after murder, the king couldn't even check. The king couldn't confront him or reprimand him. The king was
Yeah.
scared. He was like, if you
Yeah.
took him out like that, I don't want him to. I don't want to be taken out like that. The king was scared of his second in command,
Right.
and it's not. There's nothing. How should I put it? There's actually nothing nice about that. There's nothing pretty about that because
Right.
at the end of the day, I mean, I'm a Christian. I'm accountable to God. I ensure that I have people around me that can, if the
Keep you in
blinders
check.
are on, that can come
Right.
talk to me. Like, hey,
Right.
you missed a big time there. You missed a big time there. And it's so funny. I remember working with the editor. He kept
Mm-hmm.
saying, "Well, how come David? It looks as though he got away with a lot." No, and I said to him, I said, "No, David didn't. David, he wasn't perfect, and that's a big part of this entire story as well. We
Right.
don't have a lot of times we feel, oh, we have to achieve this, or we have to be this, or be that to make great things happen. No, God will use us as we just need to take bold steps." Even with all of our flaws, he was still, we're still capable of achieving great feats.
Right.
However, when David was confronted of his heels, like things he had done, I mean, he broke down. He was remorseful.
Yeah.
Joab literally, you
Yep.
come up to him and say, no, he pushed like, oh,
Yeah.
you want to get killed too? I'm about to take you out too. Like, I will take you out too. So just, move to the side. And we don't
Yep.
ever want to get to that position
Yeah.
of being that.
Joab was passing out butt whippings all day long. That guy had no problems with fighting people. Uh, there was one part that another part that there's a lot of one parts for me, but another part that really jumped out at me was in the book. It talked about when in your book it talked about when Abner was summoned, basically summoned him and David talked, and they more or less buried the hatchet, and then Abner and his brother, sorry, not Abner, but Joab and his brother killed Abner. I'm not going to spoil it this time. I'm not going to tell you how he dies. He's just another character that dies. It's the Bible. The text has been around forever, so technically spoilers aren't qualifying right now. So he's he takes out Abner, and you talked about that vengeance, and I think that vengeance is something that actually translates heavily to entrepreneurs and business people, athletes, everybody, because everybody has this kind of chip on their shoulder, and that chip is a smaller form to me of vengeance. It's not as major as others, but it is a smaller form, and it's a reoccurring theme, like you said, with Joab killing people because of his temper, his anger.
Yeah.
How should people really be addressing that chip on the shoulder in a positive way when it comes to business entrepreneurship or authors or whatever it might be?
Hmm. I think it boils down to self-control.
Mm,
It boils down to self-control because if you can, before you can be successful at anything, you need to be able to control yourself. And what does that mean? Being able to control your emotions, being able to identify those emotions and put them in check. That's really what self-control is. There's a couple of verses in the Bible. I'm just going to paraphrase. It says, a person without self-control is highly comparable to a town without walls. And then keep in mind that in ancient times, in biblical times, how do they protect themselves? With highly fortified walls. Like the wall of Jericho comes to mind. It was
right,
almost impenetrable. However, so basically when you have self-control, it's you're protected. Your heart is protected, your character, a lot of things are protected. However, without self-control, you're open to anything. Anything goes, basically. And again, it goes back to, understanding oneself If you find emotions, like I had, and I'll give you a very quick example.
Mm-hmm.
So I had my content manager. I sent her the. I have someone who helps me with social media and all of that. I sent her a message, and I sent it very quickly, but she misunderstood the message. She misunderstood the message, and then
Mm-hmm.
from her response to me, I saw that, and it was, she saw that, so she responded to me, and I was a little bit taken aback by her response.
Right.
However, I could have, so I found myself at a junction there. I could have actually responded in a certain type of way, or but what I did was I took account of, okay, how are you feeling, she's not that kind of person. I know she probably didn't mean it that way, so I just let it be. I'm like, okay, no, I'm just going to go to bed, and I'll deal with it the next day.
Right.
As I woke up this morning, I got an email from her. She was like, hey, I think I misunderstood what you meant, and can we talk about this? And we talked about it, and we just realized that, oh, okay, she misunderstood the message, and she replied based on her understanding of the message. But it's a good thing that I didn't respond back based on how I was feeling, because I was actually a bit ticked off from her response. And again, that's just an example of self-control. I could have
Mm-hmm.
just, done it Joab style. Who does she even think
Mm-hmm.
she is? Hey, like, I'm the one paying the bills around here, kind of thing.
Right.
But it's self-control. So being able to control oneself. There'll be times, as long as we're on this planet, people will step on our toes. People will step on our toes. You would have to be, I don't know, an angel or someone not to get, not to have anything done to you. But just being
Mm-hmm.
able to control our emotions, um, it's just, I think it sounds very simple, but it's one of the most difficult things.
Right.
We want to respond by being vengeful, but then just holding that back, being able to talk to people, like, work things out.
That's yeah. So that Jesus, you answer these questions so good at answering these questions. I just don't know how the questions next time. Next
Oh,
time
thank you.
I'm gonna have some tougher questions next time. That's some harder questions. All right. So Jesus, I just don't. It's so impressive to me as your very first book. And don't get me wrong, I'm not an author. I don't know a lot about writing books. I am working to figure out how to write one now, but I read a lot, and I read a lot, and I like the fact, like I said, I like the fact that the book forces you to pick up the text to understand the thought process behind what's happening. So I don't have many books that do that. As a matter of fact, I don't think I have any books that do that. Now that I think about it, it's the ability for your book and the way you wrote this to be able to put it to tell the person who's reading it to put it in their own hands and to read and to really question themselves, like you said, and to question, okay, this part of the story, how does that speak to me? This part of the story, how does that speak to me? And really go back and read one of the many dramatic books that's in the Bible. It was is really really impressive to me, and I loved it. I appreciate you taking the time to be able to come on here today to talk with me. I do have one more question, so I'm not gonna I'm just giving you your roses right now. So, my last question for you is, and this is a question that I ask all my guests, and it's going to be a little tough. The question
Okay.
is, what question do you wish you were asked more often?
Oh gosh, that's a tough
I
one.
told you. I
Um,
tried to tell you. I tried to tell you.
gosh, it's I would say, what is the most what is one of the most important values to you?
Mm, okay.
And
So I was
I would
close. I got
I can answer
close.
that question if you want me to.
Right? Please, no, please answer that question. Absolutely.
um, for me, I would say a deep love for humanity. And what do I mean by that? I'll say in whatever position that we find ourselves in,
Mm-hmm.
we always have to deal with people. And if we don't have that deep, true love for people, all kinds of people,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be hard to do whatever, to do or function in our purpose um, successfully or accurately, because we have to love people, embrace people with all of their, their flaws and everything. And I
Mm,
think it starts from there. So once we have that deep love for all of humanity, we will, it makes everything else, I think personally, I believe everything else flows from there, because we
mm,
can't get anything done without interacting with one another, with
right.
other people. So a deep love for humanity, for people, irrespective of creed, color, all kinds of people. It will dictate how we relate to people. It will dictate how we just our actions towards them, our actions
Right.
towards one another. But then if subconsciously we think another is less than, or if we don't actually haven't sat down, again, goes back to having this kind of conversation with ourselves. If we haven't sat down to evaluate our love for people, humanity, again, that shows. It shows in our actions, in all that we do. So I think a lot of things stem from having a deep love for humanity, the whole of humanity.
Wow, that's that's good stuff, Yinka. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Being able to have you on
Looking
today,
here.
being able to have you on today has been an absolute pleasure. I'm so glad we were able to sit down and talk about the book. If you do not have the book yet, Yinka, when does the book release?
So the book, it's on pre-order right now. It's available on pre-order right now. You can pre-order it off my website, yinka@adegbenie.com. It will be released on the 29th of March next month, and it's going to be on Amazon and everywhere else books are sold.
Are you gonna print hard copies?
It's so funny. My dad asked me this question the other day.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm. I need to know. My
I
book
am
collection needs to know. I need to know for my book collection. That's why I asked. I need to know for
I
myself.
think I am actually. I think I am. I think I am. Probably next, in about 6 months from now, I think, yes, I will be coming out with hard copies. Yeah,
Okay, cool. When you do, please let me know. I need you
I
to
will.
sign my book. I'm gonna buy my book, and I need you to sign that book for me. But
I will.
so that's gonna be fantastic. I can't wait to get that book. So so how can people get a hold of you if they wanted to get a hold of you to talk with you more about the book or what have you?
Oh yes, great. Well, you can reach out to me on my website.
Okay.
My name, Yinka@Adegbenle.com. I'm on social media as well. My Instagram and Facebook handles, Ways of Excellence. Ways of Excellence, that's the name of my company. And I'm on LinkedIn as well. You can look me up on LinkedIn by my full name, Adeyinka Adegbenle. Yeah, you can find me there, those places.
Fantastic. And I'm put that. I'll make sure I'll put that in the show notes when this episode comes out. So, Yinka, thank you so much again, ladies and gentlemen. I've been Oliver Perry. You can reach me at the Oliver Perry on Instagram. It's probably the best way to get a hold of me, or shoot me an email at info at the Oliver Perry Show, and my team will get back to you. So we appreciate you guys listening. We appreciate you being a part. Thank you again, Yinka, for coming on.
Thank
And
you for
I
having me.
I hope this I hope this book is blessed, and I hope it does very well in the shelves, and I'm certain it will, just based off of your knowledge and our conversation. And yeah, it was an absolute pleasure having you again. All right, so I'm gonna close out now. All right, guys, see you soon.
Thank you. Have a good one. Thank you.